So it seems that the Legion of Slaanesh are winning some big tournament victories already, and one strong list in particular seems to have been sweeping events and taking names for the Prince of Pleasure. Let's take a look at 5 undefeated tournament lists for the Emperor's Children, the unit choices that the players chose to take along, and what makes those units quite so strong at the moment. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Emperor's Children once more, and in this video I thought we'd do an overview of the Emperor's Children army lists with a roundup of the best performing tournament lists since the Codex has fully gone live on sale. For initial impressions of the Emperor's Children, it looks like they're performing incredibly strong in the first week or so of events. It's definitely too early to read too much into tournament win rates, but it does seem that they're comfortably on the upper end of Warhammer 40k's power balance rather than the lower end. It seems that Meta Monday had an over 60% win rate from the small sample of players that took them to grand tournaments on the first week of around 20 or so. Goonhammer's 40k stat center seems to have been more like 55% for people playing games with them in general since the Codex has been out but not necessarily taken to tournaments. So in general at the moment it does look like all the numbers are pointing towards them being quite good right out of the gate. It does maybe feel a bit unfortunate though that in their strongest form there really isn't all that much variety between army lists at the moment. It looks like the way to play competitive Emperor's Children, at least for the vast majority out there, is to use the Coterie of the Conceited detachment. It seems that the spectacularly enormous damage buffs that you can get from that are worth the risk that you might get them kind of late in the game. It does have some pretty general purpose helpful stratagems to help out with the strongest units as well. And even within those army lists there's certainly a whole bunch of units out of the small Emperor's Children roster that seem to be either complete auto-includes or apparently never takes at a competitive level. With such a small unit roster there's always going to be things that basically get taken in every list, but Games Workshop do look like they've got their work cut out with a few points adjustments to go up and down to hopefully make the whole roster at least more playable in a strong army. After people started to get games in with the Codex, it looked like Fulgrim and the Flawless Blades were looking on the decidedly overcosted side, and indeed it doesn't look like they're played in competitive lists at all. Other things like Mauler Fiends and the Demon Prince on foot don't seem to be making the cut as well versus the competition, at least as it is now. Let's take a look at what is working though, with a look at the army lists that have done well so far for the Emperor's Children. As mentioned, not much variety though, they are all Coterie of the Conceited lists, and they have more similarities than differences, but let's talk through the detachment, what makes it strong, and what makes the datasheet strong. First up, let's start with the Coterie detachment in itself. This one's the one that's themed around your warlord making pledges to Slaanesh, boastful of what they can achieve. If they manage it, then they can unlock massive army-wide buffs, and if they fall short of their pledge, then they get dealt D3 mortal wounds. It feels like if you can have a really good grasp of what things you're going to kill and what things you won't in a turn, you've got the potential to earn a lot of pat points early on and get the death snowball rolling. Getting some kills very early on it could be really helpful though. First up, with one slain unit that you pledged, everything gets to reroll hit rolls of 1, which is nice enough as a detachment rule in itself, then going up to hits and wounds of 1 on a 3, then lethal and sustained hits on melee, and then also going up on critical hits on a 5+ for 7 points. Even after you get to 3 of them, you're at a significantly increase in terms of damage output, basically plus 36% damage output for anything that didn't have extra special rules in the army, and then melee things just get absolutely obscene on number 5 and 7. Then to back that up, there's stratagems for a 6+ feel no pain, forcing an enemy to only attack 1 infantry unit, which is really big, and can mean that a powerful model just won't get hit in close combat for a turn. There's an ignore modifiers one, reroll hit rolls in the fight phase, which is a nice simple increase in damage that maybe does have a bit of overlap with the first pack point. One to increase the pledge count when you slay something, so basically you can harness all your kills if you've underpledged a bit, and an armor of contempt equivalent to worsen AP by 1 for enemy attacks, generally handy to have particularly against melee stuff. For enhancements it's the Pledge of Eternal Servitude and Unholy Fortune that tend to get taken the most. Eternal Servitude gives you the chance to revive on death with d6 wounds remaining if you pass a leadership test, and then Unholy Fortune can allow you to flip some dice to a 6 each turn, either guaranteeing some extra pass saves or some extra wounds on the enemy. Getting into the army list though, and first up we have this one by Colin Cochrane, who used this to take first at Coco's Mage ET, going 5-0 at a small grand tournament of 22 players. Pretty much all of these Coterie of the Conceited lists seem to be of a certain theme: multiple winged demon princes, 3 lords exultant alongside infractors, Lucius the Eternal and a lord Kakophonist, at least some tormentors, and then a bunch of noise marines and some rhinos to transport some infractors about. The decisions mainly seem to have been made what to do with spare points beyond that, and maybe whether or not to actually spam out 3 things or reduce one element of the list in favour of something else. In this particular list though, there's 3 Slaanesh demon princes with wings, one with Unholy Fortune, so that's the one that can flip some dice to 6. They move super fast with their 14-inch movement, and then Thrill Seekers to allow them to advance and charge, so they can certainly get where they need to, get a whole bunch of mortal wound impact hits, and get plenty of damage boosts from this detachment. They're also unusually durable with -1 damage. The one that can revive on death looks like an absolute nightmare to take down. Then we've got 3 Lords Exultant, each joining a squad of Infractors it looks like. They're taking the Power Spear and Rapture Lash for a pretty huge amount of attacks. They give lethal hits to their squad, the squad gives them rerolls. Between everything it just means that they've got an absolutely enormous melee threat, scouting up the board very quickly, Thrill Seekers to advance and charge, and then once you start adding the detachment buffs on top of that, things get even crazier. Basically these guys are enormous great big damage hammers, and ones that can also flip an objective at the same time with their OC too, and could potentially use the Rhinos to stage out of as they scout up the boards to get in charge range of their targets. Then we've got Lucius the Eternal in a very punchy and tough lone operative. 2 Lord Kakophonists in this one, which is more than most lists. They take dual Screamer pistols and one's the Warlord. Presumably he'll be playing very safe given that the detachment buffs revolve around him staying alive. There's a unit of the infiltrating Tormentors with Plasma Pistol, Power Sword, Melter Gun and Plasma. 2 Noise Marine units, these ones taking Power Swords on the champions, and of course the Blastmasters, and then an allied War Dog Brigand for some fast moving, general purpose fire support and some OC. Overall lots of pretty terrifying fast moving threats, huge damage potential from all those Lord Exultants and the Slaanesh Demon Princes, some nice general purpose shooting from the Noise Marines, and some disruption threat that you really can't ignore the damage output from with Lucius. Altogether looks very scary. Before we move on to take a closer look at some of the datasheets and some of the other variations of lists, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Baron of Dice. They're a high quality dice maker based in the USA, who made some fancy merch dice for the channel and offered to sponsor a bunch of videos at the time. Their main offering is a vast array of different dice designs, many of which can fit in with all sorts of wargaming armies out now. There's certainly plenty that could work well for the Emperor's Children. Their general offering tends to be 25 dice for $32 or £29. Plenty of the dice have options for squared or rounded corners as you might like, and there's just a fairly huge amount of variety that could apply to all sorts of legions, chapters and other armies out there. If you do happen to order anything from them, there's a code Auspex for 5% off any order, so be sure to use that if you do pick anything up from them. I'll also leave the link to the Auspex Tactics dice down in the video description as well, in case you wanted to pick up some of those. A massive thank you to Baron of Dice for sponsoring the video though. I'll leave them linked in the video description if you want to take a look through their range. It does seem that perhaps one of the biggest winners out of the codex has been the Winged Demon Prince. For 180 points it seems that that's efficient enough to be spammed in just about every single army list out there. That's kind of interesting as 40k has gone so far. For the most part Demon Princes in the various different Chaos factions have been sort of merely okay, maybe slightly more niche choices you might use with an enhancement, but here really seem to be a mainstay fighting line unit of the army. I guess they do have a whole bunch of advantages for them. They move really fast at 14 inches and with advance and charge, that means they've got over a 24-inch threat range when they want to. They get the good impact hits rule where if they've got 10 wounds left there's a good chance that the enemy is going to take 5 mortal wounds before the combat's even started. And then unlike most Demon Princes they've got a really good durability rule. Built in -1 damage takes them from being just somewhat hard to destroy to genuinely surprisingly tanky for the cost. It seems that between all that, they very much seem to have beaten out Mauler Fiends for the same sort of melee Mauler kind of role. Looks like some people are using either the Revive on Death one or the Flip a Dice to 6 enhancements to make one extra nasty one. Another seeming auto-include in most of these lists is Lucius the Eternal as well. It felt fairly obvious on paper that he was going to be a strong choice, basically a lone operative that still has the durability of more or less an Adeptus Custodes character. 6 wounds with a great save, toughness 5 and a 5+ feel no pain, and then loads of damage with fights first, plus even bigger damage if he happens to be attacking characters, monsters and walkers. It seems that at least some people have chosen to make him the Warlord for the Coterie of the Conceited, given how survivable he is, where if the opponent wants to try and take him down they're probably going to struggle. And even in this detachment it's not like he can't chip in and go on the offensive in the late game once most of the buffs are already active. On to the next list, and this one was used by an Arto Lampilla, who used it to take first at M&M Cavat GT, going 5 wins undefeated in another smaller tournament of 26 players. As you can see it's a fairly similar setup here. Again there's 3 Demon Princes with wings, 3 Lord Exultants with Infractors, the Lord Kakophonist takes the Unholy Fortune for the flipping dice to 6s, and Lucius is the nominated Warlord here. There's no War Dog Brigand or extra Lord Kakophonist here, but instead there's extra Noise Marines and another squad of Tormentors, so a few more bodies on the ground. It looks like the other perhaps most spammed unit in these Emperor's Children builds is the Lord Exultant with Infractors, which did look like on paper it's going to be one of the single scariest things for the points in the codex just for the sheer damage that they can do, and of course because they're Emperor's Children they still have a very good threat range. The Lord Exultant is 80 points and typically takes a Phoenix Spear for a whole bunch of strength 7 damage 2 attacks with Lance, an extra 4 Rapture Lash attacks, gets lethal hits for his lead unit, and then also that big turn of extra damage with +3 attacks to the Phoenix Spear and extra AP all around, just literally with his own damage output output on its own is pretty scary, but if he's able to charge something on the mid-board objectives with a squad of Infractors, then he can make use of their rerolls to wound, meaning the enemy is going to be taking a rather horrendous amount of AP3 damage 2 saves, which should leave a mark on more or less anything. It'll certainly get a bit worse from some of the buffs from Coterie of the Conceited as well. Infractors seem to be taken as 5-man squads to act as backup support for him. They have a whole bunch more strength 4, AP 1 and damage 1 attacks, all with precision, so quite nice for singling out characters. Most of the champions taking a Rapture Lash as well for extra strength 4 attacks, as opposed to the extra AP from the Power Sword. The Arcano Excess can allow them to generate some command points on killing enemy units, which seems fairly likely, at least in the big go turn for the Lord Exultant. And with 7-inch movement and scout, they can get up the board really quite quickly, and even on foot normally just have a pretty massive threat range with Thrill Seekers. They can also make good use of Chaos Rhinos as well, scatting them up into the mid-board and then potentially having an extra 3-inch threat range due to jumping out the front of them. For list number 3, we've got this example by Silesia, using its take first at Open des Alpes, a 66-player tournament in France, going 5-0 undefeated. Again, the main framework of the list is pretty much the same. In this one, there's just the 2 Demon Princes rather than the full spam of 3 of them like most of the rest have. One of them with Eternal Servitude for the potential revive on death. And there's also the Lord Kakophonist with Unholy Fortune for the auto-passing saves and things. Lucius the Eternal is the Warlord in this one too. For the variations that this one takes, there's still 3 units of Infractors, but 1 unit is bumped up to a big 10 of them. I guess that'll give you a lot more bodies to kill in return, and they could be extra good at clearing Horde-style units with that massive amount of attacks. Again, there's 2 Tormentor squads, and this one goes up to 3 units of Noise Marines with 3 Rhinos. I'm not 100% sure of the transport contents, but it seems that on paper you could have 2 Rhinos filled maximally with Infractors, and then a 3rd Rhino could have 2 squads of Noise Marines inside it. Talking of Noise Marines, the elites of the Emperor's Children do seem to be present in very good numbers. Really good that they made them efficient enough to make the cut. 135 points for 6 of them, and having the sort of Havoc stat line, very slightly slower movement than the rest of the Emperor's Children, and Toughness 5. And then blazing away with a bunch of Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 2 shots with Ignores cover, and the Blastmaster getting a much amped up 3 attacks at Strength 10, AP -2 and Damage 3. It looks like most people on their Disharmony list are just taking another Sonic Blaster for the extra range, as opposed to going the decreased range of 12 inches Screamer Pistol to get a Power Sword in the unit. I guess in Coterie of the Conceited, they'll really like the early damage buffs. Reroll 1s to hit and wound make them a far scarier unit, and they've got a good combination of enough threats to at least worry enemy vehicles with those Blastmaster attacks and Ignores cover, but perhaps feel kind of optimal trying to target and destroy enemy medium to heavy infantry with their flat damage 2 and 3 weapons. Lord Kakophonist has certainly seemed to be a competitive datasheet as well. 60 points for perhaps a surprisingly chunky and tough character with Toughness 5 and a 2+ save, typically taking 2 Screamer Pistols for 6 Sonic Blaster style attacks plus his Mortal Wound attack. He can either lead Noise Marines to give them more sustained hits, and at 60 points it looks like that overall combo's worth it. They do seem like a model that's interesting enough to just run completely solo as well though. It looked like one of the earlier lists was just trying to keep the Warlord safe with minimal investment, and even if the enemy does catch up with them, a 6-wound Terminator style profile on the defensive isn't the easiest to take out without a bit of focus fire. It very much seems to be a maybe choice for Noise Marines as opposed to every squad having one though. Next up, we've got this list by Jesper Onander Sharon, who used this army to place first at OK Spielen. I'm probably mispronouncing both the name and the tournament name there, so sorry about that. This one going 4 wins to 1 draw at a 67-player tournament. Again, this one seems pretty convergent and similar to some of the previous. 3 big winged Demon Princes with those big mortal wound attacks and moving very quickly. 1 with Eternal Servitude to hopefully get up when he dies. 3 Lord Exultant with small Infractor squads, Lucius the Eternal and a Lord Kakophonist, 3 units of 6 Noise Marines, 1 squad of Tormentors, 2 Rhinos. It looks like maybe the biggest difference here, swapping out a squad of Tormentors for a unit of Chaos Spawn. Maybe an interesting enough little alternative as a nuisance unit. They've got a big threat range with Thrill Seekers and have a 6-inch reactive move, so changing up the formula just a tiny bit there. That list still makes good use of Tormentors though, as do just about all the rest of them. And it does seem that, as expected from the Codex, they are basically auto-include in small units of 5, 1 to 2 units per army list seeming to be the sweet spot. The draw to the unit are that they can both infiltrate and also have the sticky objectives rule, meaning there's quite a good draw for them both to be starting on the home objective and in the mid-board as well. You could flex it a bit depending on exactly what army that you're playing. Their damage output isn't really all that much to write home about, but they do get a Melter Gun and Plasma Gun, and their attacks have precision, so might have a tiny chance to kill a character. With their infiltrate, fast movement and objective things, they've definitely got quite a lot of interesting ways that you could use them to gain advantages in a battle. Against the right opponent, they could do first turn body blocking if they really wanted to as well. Finally though, and on to our 5th undefeated list, we've got this one by an Octoputra, who used this to place second at that Open des Alpes tournament, also seemingly going 5-0 undefeated. Again, pretty much the formula that we've seen on the rest with this one. 3 Winged Princes, 3 Lord Exultant with Infractors, a Lord Kakophonist and Lucius, this time going back to the 2 Tormentors and 3 units of 6 Noise Marines and then 2 Rhinos. I guess perhaps the single biggest difference for this one, it looks like it's one of the Demon Princes that takes the Warlord traits with Eternal Servitude on it, so I guess going with a big scary model that's tough to take down and also has the potential to revive on death as the way to keep that Warlord safe, as opposed to putting it on a character that's going to be more out the way. I'd say that outside of that nominated Warlord choice though, this one feels about as cookie cutter as the competitive list gets. This does seem to be a pretty much peak example of what makes a strong Emperor's Children list right now after the Codex launch. Overall though, seems like the Sons of Fulgrim are having a very good time in their first week or so since the Codex came out. The army's looking very powerful, topping a whole bunch of big events. At least for early impressions, does seem that they're one of the stronger armies in Warhammer 40k. Definitely feels like Games Workshop have got a bit of obvious work to do if they want to make the Codex a bit more internally balanced though. Seems that for optimised lists at least, no one's really looking at any other detachments besides the Coterie of the Conceited right now, and even within that it's the exact same units that seem to get taken all the time. I'd guess if they are going to be one of the strongest armies in the game going forward for a bit, there's some scope for having some nerfs and not making them too weak as a faction. Looks like maybe some other choices could do with buffs to help them out though, maybe Fulgrim, the Flawless Blades, and perhaps things like Terminators if Games Workshop want to make them relevant. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Winged Demon Princes go up in points though, just given how much they're being spammed in every army list right now. Let me know your thoughts on the armies though, and certainly any other insights that I might have missed when talking about them. Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments as always. As mentioned, a big thank you to Baron of Dice for sponsoring the video. I'll leave them links down in the video description if you'd like to check them out. They're a high quality dice maker based in the USA. I have a whole bunch of dice that might be relevant to Emperor's Children or other armies out there, and if you do happen to pick up anything from them, then they have that code Auspex for 5% off any order. I'll leave this one there for now though. Let me know your thoughts on the army lists, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you'd like to support the channel, then Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, which I'll leave linked in the video description below. A big thank you to anyone helping out there. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.